Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Election day is around the corner. Already thousands of those living in New Jersey have cast their vote by mail ballots. This year the state legislature is at the top of the ticket, and traditionally that can mean low voter turnout. So is that going to be the case this year? Well, we're going to talk about that, as well as the issues the candidates are talking about and what the voters are saying. State Senator Anthony Bucco is my first guest. He is a prominent figure in New Jersey politics, representing the state's 25th legislative district, which takes in parts of Morris and Somerset counties. He's a leader in the Republican Party, and back in 2019, he took over his late father's seat, continuing the family legacy of public service. Senator, welcome. It is good to see you.
It is great to see you, Laura. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. I think it's really interesting to note because so much has changed since especially COVID. We no longer have just an election day. We have an election season. People are able to vote by mail as early as September. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, what you think of that, especially in a year like this where we're going to have low turnout.
Well, I think it's great that we're giving folks every opportunity to exercise their right to vote. And I encourage everybody to get out there, whether it's by vote by mail or the early voting process. These methods are safe and secure, and it gives people an opportunity to vote so that they may not miss it on election day.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about you're out on the campaign trail. You are in the legislature. What are some of the issues that you were talking about this campaign season?
Well, certainly, I think the hottest issue out there right now is this whole issue of parental rights and parents having a say in their children's education. Parents across the state are concerned about how Governor Murphy and this administration have kind of interjected themselves into this process. We've had the Attorney General suing several schools. So parents are concerned. They're concerned about the sexual education curriculum that's being imposed on the younger grades. Parents are concerned that maybe it's not age appropriate, and they want to have a say in what's going on in their kids' school. And I think it's great. One thing that COVID has brought us, the whole pandemic process of parents seeing what their kids are doing at school, right? Because they were home, and parents were helping their kids along the education process. So that has led to parents being more engaged. And I think the more that parents are engaged and the more that parents and teachers work together for the benefit of the students, the better education system we will have. So I know that our candidates are out there supporting as much parental rights and giving parents as much freedom as they can in the education of their children.
Now, some parents have been really painted with a broad stroke because when you talk about parental involvement, I think a lot of people think, well, this is just about gender identity or sex education. But Republicans, they are talking a lot about parental involvement, and that's not just all that you're focused on. It's about, well, why don't you tell me what when you talk about parental involvement, how much of it is about gender identity, sex ed, and how much of it about ensuring that students are educated, and when they graduate high school, they have options once they graduate?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that many people that push back against this issue immediately go to that issue of, well, you're only interested in the sexual education portion, or whether or not a student's, um, you know, um, what the word I'm looking for, forgive
Yeah,
me, but
gender.
but
Yeah,
it's more
gender
than that.
identity.
It's across the spectrum. I mean, parents want to be involved. They want to make sure that their kids are getting the support in the school that they need, right? It's about making sure that they get the basics taught to them. Far too often we've seen during this administration that we're adding so much on the teachers' backs that takes away from the core curriculum. And so, to the extent that parents are getting involved with what their children are being taught in school and want to have input in it, that's a great thing. And we have probably the best public education system in the country. And that just didn't happen overnight. That happened as a result of parents and teachers, everybody working together. And we want to get back to that. We want to get back to to giving parents an opportunity to be involved and to make sure that that their children are getting the best education they possibly can.
And I think there's a legitimate concern because students lost upwards of 2 years and they're still trying to bridge that gap and to make up for that lost time. And, teachers are sometimes put in a position, whether they are talking about gender identity, sex education, they may not want to be talking about that, not because they don't care about it, but because they're concerned with bridging that learning gap that was lost during these 2 years that schools were shut down.
Well, it certainly is something that they need to be concerned about because we've seen that reflected in the test scores. So, like I said, I don't think parents can be pigeonholed into just worried about gender identity or sexual education. This goes across the board, and it's a great sign that parents all over the state want to be involved. And I think that the administration should be encouraging that, not stepping in and interfering with it.
So we're hearing a lot about parental rights from the Republican side. We're hearing about abortion rights on the Democratic side. There's also a cost of living issue in New Jersey, that it is so expensive to live in New Jersey. People can't retire here. It's just too expensive. But I'm not necessarily hearing about that on the campaign trail. What are you hearing from your constituents when it comes to those issues? Because again, it's more about the parental rights and abortion that seems to be grabbing the oxygen in this campaign cycle.
Well, and I think people are talking about the cost of living. They're talking about the quality of life issues here in New Jersey, right? I've said from day one that this governor has, brought the legislature on a far left turn with a very progressive agenda, trying to mirror what's going on in California. And as a result of that progressive agenda, we've ended up with things like an energy master plan that's going to require folks to buy electric vehicles by 2035. The whole talk about the elimination of natural gas and gas stoves, losing your ability to have a gas stove and gas appliances. The whole issue of crime, that, people are stealing cars out of our driveways. In my opinion, that's a direct result of taking the handcuffs off of the criminals and putting them on our law enforcement. So all of these issues have a direct impact on those quality of life issues that I think people are concerned about. People shouldn't have to live in fear in their homes. And that's what we're hearing on the street, and it may not be that everyone's having their car stolen, but when you have one neighborhood where a car is stolen, people understand that, and the entire neighborhood talks about it. And now it's not only stealing cars out of driveways, people are breaking into homes because there's no consequence, right? We have juveniles that are stealing a car on a Monday night, being caught. They're out on Tuesday morning, and the same police department is catching them again on a Thursday or a Friday, and there's no consequence. So why would people curb their behavior? They won't. If there's no consequence, people are going to continue to do this. We need to make sure that our police officers have the tools and the prosecutors have the tools to do their jobs and to have some consequence in these actions. And don't get me wrong, we're not looking to jail juveniles, but what we have to do is have an ability to get to them to try to correct their behavior before it goes so far that there's no possibility of return.
And there are a lot, we've talked to some members of a prosecutor's office, I believe, in Monmouth County and some other areas that realize that these teens are being used by bigger, more nefarious groups who are using and manipulating them because they know, well, they're kids, they'll get maybe a slap on the wrist. They're not going to get the same penalty that those actually pulling the strings are going to get if they're caught.
It's similar to what we saw in the 70s, right? When drugs were very prevalent and drug dealers realized that they could send the kids into the schools to sell the drugs because there weren't any real consequences for the juveniles. And what happened is those kids, because there weren't any consequences and because law enforcement couldn't get to them, they ended up becoming addicted, and they ended up in a life of crime to protect their habit. And that's unfortunate. We can't allow the same thing to happen here.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, well, because the election is coming up, it's almost here. Once we get through the election, we'll have a lame duck session, a new legislature will be sworn in the new year. The issues that you're talking about, will you be dealing with any of these during the lame duck session, or will you be looking to the new season? Do you have any insight on that? I know the Democrats set
I'm not
the
sure.
agenda.
I think that'll depend on how the election goes this year. I hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will see how people are so concerned over these issues and come back and try to address some of them. It's unfortunate, though, we haven't seen that up to date. And, the Democrat leadership has refused to try to bring Governor Murphy back to the center a little bit. And, we've now, as the election is coming to a close and the polls are showing that these issues are on the top of everybody's mind, now all of a sudden we're starting to hear some response from the other side that this is something they're going to want to address. Now, we'll see. The devil's in the details, right? And we'll see whether they do that in the lame duck, or if we pick up some more seats, which I'm hopeful we will, then I hope there'll be a shift more to the middle, where most of the people reside in this state.
Yeah, let me ask you, just as we're kind of running down on our time here, do you see opportunities to be able to, you may not be able to take over in the majority in the Senate, but even to make it to a 2020 split? Do the Republicans see opportunity, and where do they see that opportunity to make those gains?
We do. I think the polling has showed us that in Legislative District 4, we have an opportunity there. We've got a great candidate running a hard race. In Legislative District 11 and 16, there are hard races going on there. And also in Legislative District 38. So the districts are there, and you can see a lot of money, being poured in on the Democrat side, because they're concerned that their incumbents might be in trouble.
Yeah. So you would need to pick up 5 to make it a tie, and 6 in order to take control.
Yeah, correct.
And you just listed 5. You listed 5 that are in play. Everything has to go right. And this is New Jersey.
Everything has to go right. But look, you never know where that outlying district may be that nobody's paying attention to, where, a bunch of parents are out there voting and they're just angry, and they're not picked up in any polling that you do, because they're kind of flying under the radar and they're coming out to vote to send the message. And then you end up with a situation like LD3 2 years ago, where, Ed Durr, who was on nobody's radar screen, all of a sudden took out the Senate president and has become, a great senator down there in District 3.
State Senator Anthony Bucco, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's always good seeing you and speaking with you.
Thank you. You too. Have a great day.
You too. Talking religion and politics can be divisive. Throw into that the headlines from around the world with the war in Israel, and that can be a huge source of stress and trauma for young people who are watching it unfold in real time. Dr. Tara Shalakani is a behavioral health professional based in New Jersey, and she's here now to talk about the role adults can play in helping those children and teens in their lives. Doctor, welcome. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Laura. It's good to be back.
Yeah, well, let's first just talk a little bit about some age-appropriate ways to talk about what is unfolding in Israel, because you really can't get away from it. It's everywhere. Children have access to their phones, and they're seeing it everywhere. So how do we talk about this in an age-appropriate way?
That's right, Laura. There really is no escaping what is happening in the world. And children really do not process information the way adults do. And I believe you and I agree that even adults are having a really difficult time trying to navigate the news and understanding what is happening now with Israel and Palestine. But what's important, first and foremost, is we need to limit exposure. So we can't hide from it. We don't live in bubbles, but I think that parents can speak to their children in very age appropriate ways, sometimes through analogies or storytelling, using an example that a child would understand, maybe even showing them a globe or a map and letting them understand that this is happening very, very far away from us so that they are safe, but that people have very strong feelings. So there are ways that we can address this where children can understand and not have to process it on their own and be fearful.
Right. While the world is very big through social media and just access to information, it can seem very, very close. So how can parents help their children if they're coping with feelings of sadness, of stress, of fear, or helplessness?
Well, and they can help their children. And again, that open communication is key because even if parents don't realize it, children are always listening. So even if parents are speaking among themselves in the household or about what's going on in the world, children are listening because they're trying to get clues and try to process this and understand it at their level.
Yeah.
But if they are noticing that perhaps their child is not acting in a typical fashion, they're not sleeping, they're not eating the same, or they're just irritable, these are red flags that they are dealing with something internally. And because they spend so much time at school, it's a good idea to just touch base with the teacher saying, my son or daughter just doesn't seem right. Have you noticed anything atypical or unusual in the school day? Because we have to collaborate, we have to work as a team. And there are valuable resources within a school. And if that isn't enough, then organizations like mine, Preferred Behavioral Health Group, we're always here to help.
Yeah.
So seeking behavioral health care should never be something that we delay or feel hesitant about because it's important that we address those needs the same way we would a physical issue.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a little bit about limiting children's exposure to these, really, they're traumatizing images, even those that are blurred out, you can see. And kids are smart, they're bright, no matter their age, they pick onto it, they pick up on these things. So do you have advice on how to limit, because I think, parents often struggle with the ability to have access to technology, whether it's a cell phone, an iPad, a computer, what have you, how to really, without looking like that they're micromanaging them, to limit that time that they could be exposed to these images.
And limiting screen time and time spent on a device is always the best course of action, but I know how difficult it is. And, I spend an awful lot of time on my devices as well. So I understand the challenge that parents have. But I think if it's prefaced with honest talk, that there is a lot going on in this world. There is a lot being put on the internet that is disturbing and no one should see. And during this time, it's best that we limit your screen time, your phone time. So I'm going to be shutting your phone down, the Wi-Fi, or I'm collecting your phone. When we explain the reasons why, it often makes actions a little bit more palatable.
Right.
So I think that it's important that children understand why this is happening and that it's for their best good.
Yeah, to be just open and honest with them. So how do parents almost, I guess what I'm kind of getting is almost kind of flip the script to give the children a sense of empowerment, really? Can they give them a sense of empowerment by saying, hey, I don't want you looking at this, here's why, or here's what you can look at, or here's what you can understand instead, so they can feel empowerment, a little less helpless.
Sure. And parents have to model that. And so I can tell you that as a psychologist, as a trauma specialist, I am limiting my exposure to the news. I am not looking at videos, images. So that is something that I am doing for my own self. So it's also important that parents model it. You can't take a device away and then be sitting watching images on your phone or have the news streaming in the household. So you have to really model what it is that you want your children to be doing.
Do as I do instead of do as
Do
I
as I
say.
do.
Do as I do.
Yeah.
Parents have got to step up. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the signs that we parents can be looking out for if their children are struggling to cope with what these events that are in their face?
Sure, sure. And this is something also that I want to preface my comments with is that for our Jewish friends and neighbors, so much of this is generational trauma as well. You know, what is going on in Israel really triggers some deep feelings because we still have Holocaust survivors in our midst, you know, older adults. So this is something that is really impacting people at a cellular level. But some things that we want to look out for is, you know, does your child show symptoms of being preoccupied? You know, maybe they're worried, maybe they're thinking about things, or they're concerned that something bad is going to happen, but they're not verbalizing. So we really need to pay attention to shifts in mood. Like I said before, sleep disturbances. If you have smaller children and all of a sudden they don't want to sleep in their beds anymore, you know, those are kinds of red flags that something's up. If they seem withdrawn, not as bubbly or social, you know, little subtle cues, because this is pretty fresh. You know, this is within the last few weeks. So we really need to start just paying attention to little hints that something could be going on.
If you have students who are in college, because there are a lot of protests that are breaking out on college campuses, a lot of students don't feel safe. Maybe other students might think, well, I'm trying to support Palestinian lives, and they get that confused with Hamas. And it can be a confusing time if you're a student in college, not only processing this, but also understanding and wanting to be supportive of friends. People have friends who could be Palestinian, and you know, how do you help those students who, you know, still have that safety net of the, you know, they're kind of on their own, but not really.
Sure. And I love that you brought that up because this is really something that is, like you said, very specific to our college students who might be out of the home for the first time in their lives and on their own, and they've never had to deal with an issue of this magnitude without the support or insulation of their parents. So it is a big deal, and there are large campuses that might have Jewish fraternities or a large Jewish community, and it can be really frightening and off-putting when you see friends who are now protesting or seem to be in support of the other side. Not that there are sides here. This is humanity, right? That first we're concerned about, that this is a humanitarian issue. So what I would say to these young adults is to kind of keep their bubbles small. You know, if you have a core group that you know you're on the same page, that you have each other's backs, to really surround yourself with these people at this time. And again, it's that exposure piece. If you know that there's a protest, don't be there. You know, don't put yourself in the midst of it. Don't bear witness to it because it's really upsetting. So at times like these, we really kind of have to hunker down, limit that exposure, and really taper down who it is that we're surrounding ourselves with so that we really feel safe and secure.
Did you have any advice that what you would say to some of these college students who maybe they do find themselves in a situation and they don't want to say anything because they're not sure of who they're going to offend, like of how to gracefully back out of a sticky situation, so to speak?
Well, I mean, when we say no to something or someone that doesn't serve us, we are saying yes to ourselves. And I know that that might be hard for a young person, a college age student, to assert that, but it's a time to really pay attention. Who are your people? You know, who do you feel safe with? Who can you trust? And if it's one person, then spend time with one person. You know, if you're prone to going out on the weekends and hanging in a big friend group, but now there seems to be some division there or some strong opinions, then these are life lessons. You know, we have to learn how to remove ourselves from situations that don't serve us and from people. And it's sad, you know, that times like this, whether it's politics or war or religion, that division can feel like a deep loss for us, that we lose people who we thought we were very connected to and on the same page, but then we find out that we're not. It can feel very just hurtful.
So just final thoughts. Best bet is taking that first step and just asking for help, whether it's for somebody like you, a professional, calling out to a trusted advisor at school, or parents, or really good friends.
Always, you know, there's got to be one person that you can really connect with during a time like this. And if you really don't have that, if you're a student, if you're in K through 12, there's counselors at school. If you're on a college campus or community college campus, there are counseling centers. And I know that in New Jersey that they are being very active and attentive to this issue. So the help is there.
All right. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's good to see you.
Always. Likewise. Thank you, Laura.
And that will do it for today. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. I am Laura Jones, and we look forward to seeing you back here next time.